Hi everybody, Sunita Passy here. Today I'm speaking to the very charming Darya Haitoglou. Darya Haitoglou is a systemic relationship coach, a family psychologist. She's also the founder of Enrich Global, which is a platform for global retreats. Darya's approach is actually driven by three different fields, which are neuropsychology, effective communication skills, and somatic body work. So let's hear how those tools can help you in your life. Welcome, Darya.
Thank you, Sunita. Lovely to be here.
Thank you. Darya, what experience led you to working with systemic relationship coaching?
Wow, I've got a long story. I tried many different tools. I come from Siberia, from a family in Soviet Russia, and I married to a Greek, which is completely different culture. Our children were born in Switzerland and Geneva, and now we live in the UK. So a very international family, a lot of different traditions and principles and values. And I had to navigate through a lot because, you know, I was always curious to find out how I can feel happier and more fulfilled, and not just more successful. And as I was going along my career in international business and working for one of the biggest multinational companies, I was still thirsty for something that was more closer to my heart. And I just couldn't find it. I tried all sorts of ways in coaching and therapy and different ways of self-development. And until I met a woman called Maria Gomori, who was 92 years old at that time. And she led a workshop called Family Reconstruction, where I traveled from Switzerland to Germany with my husband and my sister, and our newborn baby was looked after by my sister at that time. I spent 4 days with this lady and I was blown away. And I thought, wow, Maria met Virginia Satir, who's the pioneer and mother of family therapy, when Maria was, I think, 60 or 70 years old. And until 93, and even now, she's becoming 100 years old, 25th of May. She's an incredible woman. I mean, if you can Google her, you will see why. Coming from Hungary, now living in Canada, she was traveling multiple trips to Asia, to Europe. And I thought, you know what, if that woman could change her career to do systemic work at the age of 60 or 70, I could do it at the age of 30. And I did. So I completely changed from, executive coaching and business coaching to family therapy. I qualified as a psychologist and opened a practice in Switzerland, in Geneva, and started doing workshops and working one-on-one with people to do work that is deeper on a level of systemic transgenerational patterns. Because I suffered from those patterns that traveled and came before me. And although I was working on my personal things and did NLP, the neuro-linguistic programming, and I did coaching and I did therapy and psychology, and something was just missing. And the missing bit for me was that depth, that breadth that goes back into the patterns that travel in my grandparents' time, that established some of the made decisions, and there was some violence in relationships, and there was some miscommunication and mistrust that I carried. And I felt that every time my husband would make a move or look at somebody, I felt jealous. What was that coming from? And as I did that work, I delayered and uncovered some of the things that didn't belong to me, that started before me, like in the book of Mark Walling, it didn't me. And now what we do with the Institute of Virginia Satir, with Enrich Global, with the workshops, with one-on-one work, is going into the depth, because most people who have tried self-development and they know what they should be doing and they are not doing, why is that? It's because there are two things. One's too difficult to change a habit once it's established. So we work with habits, and that's the cognitive part, the prefrontal cortex. But the main part is these ties, these entanglements that push us and pull us to the loyalty to the system where we come from, and some of the patterns that maybe our parents or grandparents used to have, and how we can disentangle and feel a bit freer to move forward.
I mean, it's
with our own.
Yeah, Daria, I've experienced some of your work, and it is absolutely fascinating. It's fascinating. In general, if I can just explain, you know, there will be at least 10 people within a system. There'll be a person who is being worked on, you know, the issue that we're looking to resolve. And then the others are, so we work from parents, brothers, sisters, then to the grandparents, and extend. And then through this, there is an energy field that actually supports the individual. And through that process, what I have seen with, you know, is through the process when I've been on these workshops with you, is that it unlocks some of this tension, some of these blocks that are within the body. So tell us, so why is this approach, why is it so different? What is actually happening there?
It's a really good question. Well, mainly it's because the perspective, the way we look at the person is not an individual out of context. We all are part and consequences of our culture, of our family, of our systems that we come from, and where we learn as a child, we always learn the strategies of our parents, whether they are functional or dysfunctional. Most families have dysfunctional strategies that parents or grandparents used to cope with stress at that time, which, you know, was a very hard time that our ancestors lived in. Now it may be easier to connect with another human being, to have communication. Look how many opportunities we have to communicate nowadays, but we still have part of our brain that is catching up and is taking time to realign, to repattern. And you know, this method is very different to some of the tools that say, okay, well, we'll look at you as you are now, and, you know, use positive psychology or some quick fix methods to make sure you're good and you're fixed and off you go. And what we notice is that it's not sustainable. It doesn't work that way, because although as an individual, we say, yeah, I have a free will. I can change my behavior. I want to lose weight, or I want to get rid of that illness, or I want to trust a man, or I want to give birth to a child. And why am I still single? Or whatever that is as a pattern. And yes, my mom was a single mother and my grandmother was a single mother, but so what? You know, I'm an individual. But we look at the system as a force that is much stronger than individual free will, and working with the angle and the perspective of taking the whole system in mind, and some of the invisible dynamics that govern the behavior, that lead the behavior of individual, and having those in mind and reflecting and getting some insights from other people, like biofeedback, is a powerful tool, because we sort of go through the consciousness, the block of a person says, I'm fine, you know, there's nothing wrong with me, or I'm the guilty person, it's my shame and my low self-esteem, you know, something is wrong with me. We don't need all that. The person actually whose issue has been resolved sits and observes, and what they're noticing is there are little movements and there are little pieces of information that other people are telling them, without knowing the background, without knowing the context of their case potentially. And sometimes it's a blind constellation, sometimes it's systemic work that other people have no idea what it is, but they have sensation. And we don't know how it works. Some people say it's a morphogenetic field, like Rupert Sheldrake's wrote in the book, The New Science of Life, or, you know, how it happens, we don't know. How does intuition happen? How do birds know where to fly, and how, you know, fish know where to swim? How do we know that the person is going to call us and they call us? How do we know For example, when to wake up, when we wake up on time, we set certain things. And how do we know that something is happening to a person and they tell us exactly that? So these are pieces of intuition that we're tapping into the something larger. We don't know scientifically what it is yet, but we're just on the edge of sort of looking into quantum physics, quantum biology, quantum, the energy fields. It's a little bit edgy, but what matters for me, I have a very critical mind, very skeptical mind. If it works, I'll use it.
Yeah.
Even if it's half placebo, I'll use it. And what we've seen, still there's a lot of work to compare it to placebo effect, but it works almost in all cases, which is more than a placebo effect. And if that is the case, and scientifically we can prove it, why not to use it? It's a wonderful tool, and now we've tested it works through online as well, so people can give the feedback as through their body sensations, if they feel colder or warmer, or whatever they feel. And this information gives valuable insights to the people who come to with their issue, and something shifts and moves, and as you said, unlocks whatever that is. I don't know, and maybe that's okay to not know. As a psychologist and a researcher, I always want to know how it works, why it works, but what matters is if it works or not.
Absolutely, I agree. Yeah, as an Ayurveda practitioner, so we use a system. We use a system in the body which we call it doshas. So it's a diagnostic way for us to be able to see the energies that are predominant within an individual. And through that process, we can say that we kind of spiritually counsel the client, because we peel off the layers by asking questions that really take us back, not just into their history of health, but also into their ancestry. But this is quite different, you see, because here you're talking about actually how environment impacts an individual, and that's separate to actually the experience that you're having at this very deep soulful level. So you mentioned some of the conditions that it's good for. What else is it good for?
I always start with the pattern that travels through generations. So we do the family map, which is an easy exercise, just looking at what happened before in terms of relationships. So what type of things, it could be health related, it could be events related, it could be decisions related, emotions, it could be behavior related. So anything that is more than once. And if, for example, you don't know much about your family and just you feel like in your lifetime that something repeats itself, for example, there's that emotion of anger that comes back out of nowhere, or it is that sadness and depressive state that sort of, whatever you do, take vitamins or run, or, you go to a therapist, or you do all sorts of self-development activities, but it creeps back into, that daily life. So or it could be a thought, for example, I'm not good enough, or the thought could be, what's wrong with me, or something negative that bothers, that you don't want anymore, but you don't seem to be able to cure, in a sense, get rid of or transform into something positive, or a block that prevents you from achieving better health, better prosperity, abundance, or a relationship. I specialize in relationship because that's the topic that is painful for me personally, and where I come from, I had a lot of failed, but also relationship that I learned from. And the current relationship with Alex, my husband, we've been together for more than 10 years, but it's a journey. And every time I face, those little demons, my emotions of patterns, I work through them systemically, and we're still together, and we have two beautiful sons, and it is not an easy thing, but it can help in a relationship communication, and generally something that is beyond a little fix. If, for example, you're tired and you want to sleep, fine. If you've got something something urgent and unexpected, and you can fix it that's absolutely fine. But if it's a chronic and reoccurring, this method can help. And there are many practitioners who do family systemic constellations, many practitioners who do satir family reconstruction processes in therapy, psychotherapy, as well as psychiatry, and also coaching. Now we're training coaches in satir, and we're just launching a new online satir certification in coaching and mentoring, which people can learn these tools.
That's amazing. So, so I've got two questions actually. So the first one was, can this help? So I completely understand how it can improve life, from the dynamics that you've explained. Can it also help us in therapeutic ways? So for instance, I will have clients that come to me that may be experiencing pain in the body, or they may have some physical symptoms that we're working on. So actually that's the first question.
Yes, I've seen this working with pain and chronic pain and even some, more difficult conditions. But I wouldn't say it is something that I work with, just because I'm not a trained doctor or a medical practitioner. And I know that some doctors use this technique and use this tool for their practice. And I know some of the therapists that accommodate and combine this practice with the body work that they do. And there's even health family systemic work, which is a new sort of stemming from Virginia Satir work. But this is something that I've seen work, and it has very positive effects. But personally, I am not specializing in that.
Yeah.
And I'm more specializing in the psychology and the mental side of things. But I know that it works on the body, because body in a way is a consequence. The bodily functions and the bodily reactions are the consequences of some of the mental and emotional processes that we're going through. There's a whole area of psychosomatics, how our thoughts, prevalence thoughts and emotions affect the way how we feel and the way how our body reacts. That's already proven. Our biochemistry reacts to our thoughts and cognition. How we think, how we talk in our head affects how we feel. Hence, why meditation works, scientifically proven. That's hence how the body work and the techniques that are massage and therapies, and the Havening technique or the neurolinguistic programming, how and why it works, because body mind is totally connected.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely it is indeed. And so the trainings that you're doing now, so you mentioned a few things. You mentioned body work, you mentioned massage. We can go and have a lovely massage and maybe go in feeling a little bit out of sorts and come out feeling better. We can have body work, but I'm presuming the trainings that you have developed and are now offering through the Satir Foundation, that in order to get the benefits, you have to practice this. Is that correct?
Yes, I mean, we know so much and we know what we should be doing, but unless we're doing this, it's very hard to actually come to fruition.
Yeah.
We have two parts of our brain, and it's like going to a shower. We take a physical shower to get rid of our toxins, but we rarely do emotional shower or mental shower unless we meditate, we go to nature, we do our systemic work on a deeper level. Because it's like sort of imagine the layers of the ground, right? We have the sand, and it may look very clean, but the water just goes in and stays underneath, right? And there's clay. How do you work with clay? You need some movements, and maybe that's the body work, that it's not just words, right? So you can thin and you can reshape the clay, but then it goes into the deeper layers. What's deeper than that? There are different materials, and they could be metals that need different attention and different processes to deal with them, to soften them, to different reactions, to go even deeper, so that whatever that's in the core, and the core is our beautiful soulful energy, the self, we can then thrive. But most of us, and me personally, I stayed on a sand level because that was easy. It sort of like disappears very quickly, it looks very clean, and job done, I thought. But then it comes back again because those layers beneath were not worked on. So yeah, it's just one of the things that unless we work on the depths, that tree will not flourish, will not give the same quality fruit, if we just put it in the sand.
Darya, I know you work with clients all over the world. And so what would be really interesting is if you could share some of the particular incidences of working with some of your clients that particularly stand out.
Oh, we have so many case studies and anecdotes. I mean, they're flying every day. So one of the things that I find particularly interesting, and again, it is not a statistics. It's like we haven't done yet full analysis. It could be even a coincidence. We don't know. But when people report back and they share their success stories, it fascinates me. For example, we have a couple of couples who couldn't get pregnant, and they came to our workshops and retreats, and within a month they got pregnant naturally after trying many different artificial ways and spending a lot of money on doing that, and in the end, maybe they just relaxed during that time. Maybe they just needed that time to bond, and so that they can relax their psychological barriers to each other and connect so well, and sex flows. Maybe that. Another case, we had a few tough cases where adults, we mainly work with adults. I sometimes work with orphanages, but with the people who work with orphans, because I believe that as adults, we always affect our children. So instead of working with children, we can indirectly work with parents of these children to help the full system. So we had tough cases when parents of children came and they had, some strong mental dysfunctions, and these dysfunctions went away, like anorexia or bulimia or even schizophrenia. Again, this something that works together with the health practitioner and the doctor's side. And it may be a coincidence that at that time that person got better, but it's an interesting coincidence that after trying for many years different modalities, different treatments, different variations of medical treatments, after the work they've done with systemic therapy, they got better. And actually, Virginia Satir, who created systemic family therapy, she herself worked with the case of schizophrenic young lady. At that time in the 60s, that was only treated by psychiatrists and mental hospitalization and drugs. And in the case of Virginia, she noticed that the lady started feeling better. But when she went back to her mother phoned Virginia, said, what are you doing with my daughter? She's becoming different. She's becoming strange. I'll sue you. You're not a psychiatrist. And Virginia, instead of replying in a negative way, she said, why don't you come together with your daughter and we'll have a chat? And they did. They trusted her. They came together, and she noticed that they both influenced each other, and the daughter was sort of degrading in front of her mother into kind of psychiatrical terms. She was becoming schizophrenic. And then as she started working with her mother, she thought, where's your dad? Where's the father? So they brought the father. That's how systemic family started, by working with the whole system. Mm-hmm. And now we can work not necessarily with these people, because most of the time not everybody is present or willing to cooperate, but through one person and representing other family members, it's possible to heal such cases. I mean, it's quite a strong one. And I mean, we've got tons of relationship problems and child abuse and people with different dysfunctions, and it can go quite deep and quite dark. But again, the process is not as difficult. It's quite it can be quite strong. It can be quite traumatic. So there is a risk of re-traumatization. And that's why we need to be careful as practitioners not to go too far down the line, and making sure that there's a good body of practitioners to support the person afterwards. And there's a willingness of the person to do that. But, there are certain tools to use, like in any therapy, to make sure that the person feels safe and there's an aftercare. And it's like a psychological preventative care, or any medical condition, right? There are some side effects. So we need to be careful not to overstep and not to do too much work for a person if they're not ready. So we always screen and make sure that person knows what they're going through. And if they don't, then they're already functional enough to make sure they take responsibility for some of the actions to go throughout this work. But I mean, the fact that the person is not doing the work, they're just observing. And this is an interesting possibility to take what's good. And everybody, even myself, I learn every time, and I heal myself every time I work with the toughest cases. And the truth is, unless it resonates somehow, we don't get affected by it. It only affects ourselves if something is very strong, is connected to our experience in the past, and then it's a good opportunity to work through it. And there are some wonderful cases of people who represented family members or just observed, and they got so much out of it. They started dating, they made unions, they created marriages, they healed their personal life, they boosted their professional life, catapulted their business, found the right person to hire. I mean, you name it. There are different applications, just a tool. I mean, whatever you use it for is up to you, but it's good to do it with a professional practitioner who has a background and also training in this kind of field.
Darya, this week we've been meeting with other experts in what I'm grouping it together as alternative health, and they've been sharing a little bit about their health measures as we go through this time with the virus altogether. So just finally, I wanted to ask, what would your measures be? What do you recommend to our viewers?
The measures for health?
Yes, right now, yes. As we all go through the pandemic together, are there any three key points that you would suggest they should practice?
Well, the basic health, of course, is exercise, is eating healthy, and taking time for yourself to just calm and distress. Because if the vagus nerve, our sympathetic nervous system, is really high and alert, and we have a lot of cortisol level and adrenaline in our body, it's very hard to do anything else. So I run in the morning or do workouts. I take my meditation pill. I meditate daily. It's important for the brain, for the mind, and the body. And I also, taking my time. So I go for a walk, or I just stay on my own and do things that I love. Because every time I serve and I look after 2 kids, and we have a busy household and homeschooling, and my husband working, and we have no help currently, obviously, during COVID-19, I get to my limits. So what helps me is that, how much time do I spend? The measure for me is how much time do I spend just with myself. And, I made a little sign on the door saying, I'm working, sorry, or please come in, so I can regulate the flow of children and my husband coming in or not, so I can stay present with myself. And I don't watch news for days, because I know the news that, once I get into the social media channels and the news channels, it's all going to be predominantly negative. So I protect myself from exposing to too much negativity, and I don't allow our children to watch news or hear in radio. I just put the happiness podcast when I run by Dr. Laurie Santos, or I watch a YouTube video that I really want to watch. So I become mindful and conscious of my efforts. And of course, when I feel resourceful, then I do some reflections on, my strategies to cope with stress, and whether they are functional or whether they come from my parents or grandparents that I don't want in my life. And then I, with a deep breath, I walk through that kind of block, and I feel okay, I can maybe do something different, and then I move again. But this is a temporary situation. I always think once I know it's temporary, I can see the bigger picture, and it's going to be much better. Just it will end soon.
Yeah. And how can people contact you, Darya? To work with you, and also to find out more about the trainings.
Well, my website is daryahaitoglou.com. Maybe you want to spell it out for people to have a link underneath the video, and
I'll do that.
we could also send a link to the workshop that we do monthly, which is open to public, just to see how the systemic therapy works and the Virginia Satir growth model. And enrich.global is our website for retreats. And then virginiasatir.co.uk is the UK Institute of Virginia Satir, where you can find more information about the work that we do.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sunita.